Today we're potting up some spring containers, and we aren't quite in full spring yet, so we still have to be cautious of some cool nights. In fact, earlier today it was in fact showing some flurries outside. So the nice thing about potting something up like this is kind of a fabric container smart pot, is that this one has handles. So if we have some cooler nights, I could still drag this inside and protect it. Now, what we are planting today is primarily perennials, so we're not too much concerned, but you know, they've kind of been used to warmer conditions being in a greenhouse. So first of all, we've got our container here that we've chosen. We've got a rather larger container. This is about a 15-gallon pot here. And we've got about 2/3 of it filled with potting soil already. Now I leave that extra space because as we put our containers inside there, they're naturally going to take up a lot of this surface area and this space in here. So we actually won't need to put as much potting soil around there. And it's just easier. If you were to fill it all up with potting soil, you're going to actually be having to take it out in order to get your plants in there. So once you put a little potting soil in there, we're next going to go ahead and put in some slow release fertilizer that we have here. That's just going to help get these plants off to a good start as they continue to grow through the season. So we're going to go ahead and work that into the soil, the potting soil here. Again, it's always something to remember when you're potting into containers. You never want to use topsoil. You always want to use a potting soil media because that is made so that it drains better than your traditional soil that you have in the garden. So here is one plant that I just really couldn't help but get at the garden center, and this particular one is a knockout rose. And I know we're all very familiar with knockout roses, but this is actually a petite knockout rose, and it's kind of noted for its distinctive fire engine red, smaller flowers than what you traditionally see on some of your other knockout roses, and then I just really like the contrast with this dark emerald green foliage. Obviously it is petite, so it's going to stay smaller at about 18 inches tall and 18 inches wide. So this is going to be our centerpiece here in our container. And when you're kind of designing a container, you want to think about how it's going to be viewed. Is it just going to be viewed from one side, which is what we're planning on this? It's just going to be viewed from your angle here. You might look at whether you want it to be viewed from all around. If you want it to be viewed from all angles, then you want to make sure that you're putting something on every side of that container. Because ours will just be viewed from one angle and it'll be up against a wall, we're really going to focus on this front side and kind of creating more of a cascade of color coming down towards you. So this one that's 18 inches tall is going to be our centerpiece that we're going to put more towards the back of the plant or the container here. When you take something out of the container, you're going to want to look at the roots obviously as well. So you can see we have nice root structures. They're not circling or anything. You could go ahead and tease those a little bit. If they were densely rooted, you definitely want to tease those to make sure that you open it up, allowing for those roots to know they're in a bigger container so that they will continue to grow down into this potting media. So ours looks good. We're going to go ahead and place it right here. You can see where the height of that is going to be just below our container. So that's about good. So we can set that there. Next, what we have is a Sally Rosa April Night Salvia. So we're going to again just gently pull this out of the pot. Anytime you pull a plant out of the pot, what you want to do is kind of put the plant in between your hands or your fingers and flip that pot over and allow gravity to pull it out. You might want to kind of crush the container a little bit, causing it to flex a little bit, squeezing those roots, and gently it will fall out of the container. You don't necessarily want to pull on the vegetation and pull it out of the container because that can damage your plant. Now this April Nights Salvia is said to be a longer bloomer than the May Night Salvia, so we're looking forward to seeing that, but of course it has those well-noted salvia spikes that are going to continue to bloom. And we're going to put these kind of on either side of flanking this rose here. And of course our rose is smaller at the time being right now, but as it grows it will get bigger and fill this pot even more. And then in the front here we've got a few different options that we're going to work with. So we've got this Fort Hill creeping phlox that we're going to have kind of draping down the front. You can see those wide healthy roots. We've got a good establishment of roots here. Again, I'm just going to sort of tease those, pull those apart, and this is going to go down more in our front here. Now when I was looking at this, I kind of was thinking I needed something with a little more pop to it as I was putting these colors together. So I found this yellow alyssum that I really liked. Again, alyssum tends to be more of a spring bloomer, but a lot of these are. Our rose and our salvia will continue to bloom a little bit further into the season. But I like to just have a lot of color right as we're coming into the season. If anything, this will definitely help our pollinators get off to the start before a lot of other stuff starts blooming. So we will have these ready to go as soon as we start seeing those pollinators show up. So I'm just going to place those in there. I've got 3 that I'm going to put around. Now this alyssum, you do want to go ahead and deadhead it later on, just to kind of replenish that vegetation. So after it is kind of blooming, go ahead and cut that back. But at that point, our rose is going to be getting bigger and it's going to be taking on more of an appearance in this container. And tuck those in, and this is getting pretty tight in here. So like I said, we don't have a lot of room, but we do have some space that I'm going to go ahead and put some potting soil and fill in between all of these spaces. So I think we pretty well have it all filled in with soil in between all of those plants. You can see it's pretty packed in here. Now again, this is so we've got plenty of flower and color for those pollinators early in the season. And in fact, we might not even be putting this outside just yet because it is still good and cool here in north central Oklahoma. But what's nice about this, even though these phlox and these smaller alyssums are probably going to fade later on in the season, as the rose continues to grow, we'll be able to pull these out and we could plant the phlox somewhere else in our garden so it'll continue to give us a nice show. It is a perennial, so next spring we'll be able to enjoy it somewhere else. So there's no reason why you can't transition some of these perennials once they're past their prime out into your garden, and this container could just turn into a beautiful miniature rose container later on in the season. So if you're looking at planting containers, here's a great option to transition perennials from your containers to your garden later in the season.
We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.